topics we're going to cover are really quick. State sovereignty versus federal control. Point out there's only one sovereign. History of the Common Core standards, which goes a lot deeper into our history than most people suspect. Rising national resistance to Common Core, which if it doesn't happen locally, is not going to happen nationally. Got a small problem with this. So little time and such a big subject. If anyone has seen my blogs, getting through my first paragraph is usually 10 minutes, let alone an entire presentation. So this is going to be interesting. A fellow named Richard Mitchell, back in the 80s, wrote a number of books. And this quote kind of sums it up for me. The brooding monstrosity of American educationism, the immense mindless brute that now troubles the waters of all, that is done in the land and supposed cause of education. When, as you see, I can barely bring myself to write that word without quotation marks or even fashion a sentence less than 9 or 10 lines long, I feel this pain. Lest I inadvertently fail to suggest the creature's awesome dimensions and seemingly endless, tentacular complexities. To try to do better, the somber subject requires clarity. It does. It's important. The problem I've got is that I can't do that. There's no possible way to cover everything involved here. Fortunately, all these folks are going to give you a lot of the details. So I'm taking as my point to try to convey to you, give you perspective on what this covers, how it impacts your life, that you can frame the details you're going to get from the rest of the day. What I can do is hint at how the current events, the details of those, fit into what's going on. What I can do is hint at what the larger picture is, what the monster is not in education, and to where it came from. And try to point out the paths that will be barred from us forever. This creature is allowed to close its tentacles around us. State sovereignty versus federal control. First item, there's only one sovereign in the United States of America. There's not 50. There dang sure ain't one federal sovereign. It's we the people. Period. End of statement. We forget today how revolutionary those three words were. When Patrick Henry first saw them, he threw a fit. He said, well, you're going to reform our states from us. What is this, we the people? How do you speak for them? It took him a while, but he finally got it. It's an important one to get. It is usually brushed aside, not even thought of anymore. But if you view either the state or the federal government as your sovereign, all you're doing is reducing yourself to a subject of either a big or a small despot. That is not the way we're set up. That is not the way we're designed. Good reason. The individual as sovereign is what colors and defines our entire approach to government, to our society, how we interact with each other, and how we educate ourselves. Under our system, both the states and the citizens have powers. 10th Amendment, powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited by it, yours and the states. 9th Amendment, the only rights that are held are by the people. The state, not the federal government, the people. The purpose of the powers that they have is to strengthen and uphold your rights to live your own life. That is the whole point of it. The governmental theme behind everything can be summed up in one word I think best. It's a little anachronistic, came along after the founders, early 1800s, subsidiarity. And the point of it is that the assignment of powers to smaller units is more efficient and effective. The principle that political power should be exercised by the smallest and least central unit of government is very important. It is what we were built around. The individual is the smallest unit of government. And you need to be exercising your powers to see that it stays that way. If you let it slide, Power likes to centralize. It likes to take control. It'll be very happy to take control of you if you let it. It'll be even happier to educate you into thinking that that's a good thing to do. The reality of self-evident truths. Survival requires a man to reason. You go out into the woods, if you don't think, you die. It works really well. Up, down, poof, you're out. Reasoning effectively requires you respect reality. It's very fine and dandy if you want to get to here to there, but if you don't take into account the canyon in between here and there, again, poof, you're gone. To do that, to live as a person, you've got to be able to think. You've got to be able to make choices. You've got to be able to speak your mind, associate with people, retain the things that you put together, your property, in order to live a fully human life. If you don't do that, what you're living definitely is not liberty. Living someone else's idea of what your life should be, that's generally not a good thing. Individual rights are not some woolly-headed, airy abstractions of some philosophers that had silly wigs. It's a concrete reality. It's very easy to realize when you look at things and figure it out for yourself. If you do, you've got to. Endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights is a very good description of reality, of life. De Tocqueville, Democracy in America, Decentralization, he came through in the 1830s or so. A couple things he noticed. The inhabitant becomes attached to each of the interests of his country as his very own. He glories in the glory of the nation. We say, oh, well, people don't think that anymore. Why? Maybe because you don't have a close connection to it. You're not involved in it. There's things in between you and that government and that nation. One thing he pointed out is often European sees the public official only force. American sees the law. It can be said that in America, a man never obeys a man, but obeys justice and the law. Not exemptions from the law for particular friends of those who manipulate the law. It's an important distinction to make. Important to stop people who do have power from assuming over you. Jefferson's autobiography can kind of describe this decentralized subsidiarity as well. He said, but it's not by the consolidation or concentration of powers, but by their distribution that good government is effective. One thing he noted was, were we directed from Washington one to sow, one to reap, we would soon want bread. We'd also soon want bread, or gasoline, or health care, or anything else. It's not an ideological point of view, though. Important to grasp that. This is not Democrat versus Republican versus Tea Party. This is the way things are. Power has got to be restrained so that it is only acting to effect what it has rightful understanding of, knowledge of, direct information about. If you don't do that, you get power acting from a distance, things that it's ignorant of, has no grasp of. It's not going to work out well. It cannot work out well. Not because smiling Bob Senator over there says it won't or will, but because the information isn't there. What are you acting on? I don't know. Regulation says do this. Oh, okay. What's going to follow from that? Mistakes become the norm. Mistakes become policy. Waste, corruption, destruction. Oh, what's going to follow from that? You can't not. Power exerted not from the top down, but from the bottom up. It's equally foolish, just as foolish, to have someone who's flipping burgers telling the president how to organize foreign policy when they don't have direct knowledge of that. They don't have an understanding of that. They are not involved in it. But it's equally foolish. It's important to assert this. It is equally foolish for the president to tell that person flipping burgers how to live their life, how to raise their kids, how to take care of their health care, how to do this or that. if you don't have knowledge and understanding of the details involved, bad things are going to happen. I challenge anyone to tell me how that's not going to result. I've been challenging a lot of people for a few years. I haven't gotten a response, other than running. Jefferson, in a letter to a fellow named Charles Yancey, summed up where education fits in our world. As the nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Can't. Also noted down there, where the press is free and every man is able to read, all is safe. That might be news to Senator Feinstein, who wants to regulate what is a free press. But it's also news to someone who wants to decode informational text. What the heck does that mean? Education has been fit into the structure of our government from the beginning. When states were transitioning, or when land was being transitioned from wilderness to territories to states, we went through a process. Jefferson had a large hand in writing the Land Ordinance of 1785 and laying this out, how these areas were going to be parceled up and organized. Every single one of them was brought down to a section, 6 miles square, 36 square miles. The 16th square was set aside for education. The sale of it, of land, property, and management, was to fund education for that township. That was a fundamental building block. It is a fundamental building block of everything we have. Education, everyone wants to reform. Who defines it? When is the last time you heard one of these people out there saying, we got to do this, we got to push that? Tell you what it is they're pushing. Find out what's in it. Pass it first. It doesn't work out well. Undefined is a mandate for transforming society. How people interact, what they think of thinking. If you can control education, you can control pretty much everything. More so the thoughts that are no longer thought, if you control it. My kids, all their friends, coming through school, I've got one who's been out for a few years, one who's in college, one who's just going into 9th grade. They're all saying, oh, the teacher's talking about silly stuff. And they know they'll get a response from me that'll go on for a while. But it's more important what they're not getting than what they're being taught is foolish. It's a particular point of view in mind that information doesn't exist, or that you can't understand, or is just incomprehensible. That's a great tool for power as well. There's two views of education, and this fits in with what Gretchen mentioned when she started. Is education something that fits you out to be a moral, self-governing person, capable of living your life in liberty? Or is it something that's designed to fit you out with useful skills to earn a living? Those are two very, very different perspectives. And everything that follows from them is a huge difference. Timeless truths. We are all created equal. Any of these that were put in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, they're as valid today as they were 200 years ago or 2,000 years from now. 2 + 2 = 4. It just is. When you got something that's true, it's true. I don't buy it. It may shift around a bit, but the truth is there. But if you're basing things around particular skills, think what the skills were when Jefferson wrote those words. When Madison and the guys got together and wrote the Constitution. Did they have particular skills in mind that you had to have? We had to get blacksmithing. We had to keep up with the French. If that's your standard, then as technology changes, so do the things you organized around. They go out the window.